Hi folks, this is Karim Rao from IT Visualizer channel. We will continue our lab, the Red Arrow lab. This is the video number 35. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We have been continue working securing our Windows Server 2019 based on the recommendations of the Department of Defense and the Defense Information System Agency. This is the video number 5. We have been working now for 4 videos. We have stopped the last time at this recommendation. It says that Windows Server 2019 must have orphan security identifier SIDs removed from user rights. What we mean by SIDs? SIDs, it means security identifier. What is a security identifier? It is a unique number given to every object in the Active Directory. So every user will have an SID or a security identifier. Every group will have an SID or security identifier, and every computer will have a security identifier. So every object in the Active Directory will have a name. So for example, we can have a user in Active Directory called Karim, and he will have a security identifier, a very long number that will make him very special, or we can identify him by this number. Okay, so for example, if you have multiple names and they are the same, which could not happen by the way, but if there is multiple names, or you have a user with two, or we have two users with the same name, they can be identified by the security identifier. And by the way, the Active Directory does not accept duplicate names, by the way. Okay, duplicate names or two users in the same container. Anyway, so the security identifier, it is a unique ID given to the user, something like the password ID. So what does he say? Accounts or groups given rights on a system may show up as unresolved SID. So for example, if I have a user called Karim in the Active Directory, and he is not displayed by his name but by his security identifier. So for example, I have a user called Karim in the Active Directory, and I give him permissions to access a certain folder. Okay, so what I do, I just normally go to the folder, okay, like this, and tell him right click and then properties. Okay, and then if I'm sharing it, I will share it and give him permissions on the shared folder. But if I am not sharing it and I'm giving it NTFS permissions, so I go there and here is my name, this is Karim, and he have full control over this folder or this file. So what happens if I suddenly opened this folder, and instead of seeing Karim as a user, as a name, I see it as a number? Okay, what does this mean? This means that this user is no longer, okay, no longer there. It was deleted. Okay, this is one. Or I am not connected to the domain controller or to the domain. So these are two cases where the users or groups or computers appear as an SID or as a number, not as a name. So what does he say this recommendation says? This recommendation says that if you have any users or groups or computers deleted from your Active Directory, and these users, especially the users, have certain permissions on folders or files, you need to remove them or remove them from the folder permissions. So for example, on our scenario, now I have Karim. So for example, Karim has full control over this folder. So what happens here if I found it not by name, by number? So that means that my name was removed or the user was removed. So simply I just click on it and tell him to remove. So I need to remove Karim from the permissions on the folder. Okay, so this is what he's talking about. You need to check your shares and folders, okay, or your file shares and folders, and see if there is any security identifiers appearing like this. So you need to take care if there is any security identifiers appearing. So that means that the user is deleted or the group is deleted. So you need to remove him from the permissions on the folder or on the file. So let's see what he's saying here in the description. Accounts or groups given rights on a system may show up as unresolved SID, okay, for various reasons, including deletion of the account or group. So here the user may appear as a number or not by his name, because that means that he was removed. Okay, so when you open a folder and you see some users that have permissions on the folder are not appearing by their names but by the numbers, then that means that the users are removed. Okay, so if the accounts or groups are reminated, so he's saying that this is a security point. If you leave the users or you leave the groups as is on the permissions of the file, so for example I have file X, I have given Karim full control over the folder, okay, and then I have removed Karim, but still his name is in the permissions of the folder, so I need to remove him from the permissions of the folder. So he's saying if these groups are reanimated, so if someone has taken this number and returned it back to a name, he can access, okay, he can access the folder and have full control. So for example, I have removed Karim and some hacker was able to go to the folder and see the permissions and see that my name is appearing as a number, and he was able to return or to convert the name to a number, sorry, to the number to a name, so then he can access the folder. So you need to take care when you delete users, you need to delete them from your permissions on your shared folders or on your files. This is one step. There is the potential that maybe still have rights no longer intended, so the user was removed but he has still permissions on folders and files. So why? You need to remove his permissions on the folders and shares. Valid domain accounts or groups may also show up as unresolved SID if the connection to the domain cannot be established for some reason. So sometimes your name could appear, or your name could appear on a shared folder in a domain, could appear as a number, or your name on a shared folder or permissions or your permissions on a shared folder you could appear as a number because you are not connected to the domain anyway. So we need to take care to always scan and see our files and shares and see if there is any users appearing as numbers, and check also the user right assignments. So the user right assignments, these are the group policies or a couple of group policies we use to control the users in our domain. So also we need to check them. So for example, if you have a group policy to for example block Karim from accessing the domain, so and you have removed the user of Karim, so you need to go to this group policy and remove Karim from the group policy, or not to apply the group policy on Karim anymore because he was removed. Okay, so here is saying that you need to go to the user assignment or user right assignments. So this is the one. If for example go here and tell him run, okay, and tell him gp edit, okay, and then we go to user assignments. Here we go, this is one, and then we go to computer Windows setting, and then we go to security setting, the local users or local policies, security options, sorry, not security options, user right assignments. Here we need to check and see if there is any user appearing as a number. So for example, here we can see that create symbolic links, this group policy, we have two users, the administrators and another one appearing as a number. So we need to make sure that this number, it is not a deleted user. Okay, sometimes some users in the system appear as a number, not always, but you need to take care that this number is not a deleted user. So this deleted user has access or have a group policy applied to him. So if he is deleted, we need to remove him, okay, from the group policy. Okay, so here is saying you need to check these. Okay, you need to check and see, and before deleting this one or before removing him from the group policy, you need to search the internet. Maybe this is a system user. Sometimes the system have their users as numbers, appearing as numbers, or the system users appear as numbers, not as name. Okay, so you need to take care to check your user right assignment and see if you have any group policies applied to users that are no longer available in the domain or was removed. Okay, so this is it. We need to go and check and see if we have the local server group policy, if there is any users appearing in the local group policy as numbers, okay, or SIDs, on unresolved SIDs. Okay, So we can do this. You can go to the server and run a special command, or a command that will get you the user rights. Okay, so you can use this command to export the user rights group policy and see if there is any SIDs that we don't know. So for example, he is saying that if you have a number beginning with S1511, then this is called authenticated users. Sometimes the group is not appearing as authenticated users, but by this number. So don't delete it. Okay, it is there already. So S15113, it's local account. Okay, here is saying if any unresolved SID exist and are not from the currently valid accounts or group, this is the finding. So he's saying that if you find any of these numbers, this is not a finding. These are users and groups that already exist and are not deleted. So leave them as they are. Okay, if any numbers not listed here, then this is maybe a user that was deleted or account was deleted. So he's saying to us the numbers. Okay, so we need to check our user rights or user right assignments group policy and see if there is any group policy applied to users that was removed from the domain. And also need to check our shared folders and files if there is any users that have permissions on them and they was deleted from the domain. So this also is something else. So he's saying here the results in the file identity user assignment. So we will run or export user right assignments and see if we have any groups or users appearing as number, not by ID, or not appearing as numbers, not by name. Okay, let's see now if we export it. So we'll export it to a folder on the domain controller. We call it ctemp. Okay, we will see this folder now, or this C will see this this exported file. So this will export all of the group policy, local group policy of the user assignments or user right assignments on the domain controller. So here we can see that, for example, the group policy to set network login rights, we have these numbers. So we need to check what are these numbers. So the group policy to set network login right, this is the local group policy on the domain controller. It is assigned to these users. Okay, these I don't know, users or groups. So we need to know these numbers or this unresolved security identifiers. Okay, are they groups or users? We need to check and see. Okay, so for example, we see S1511. I think this is a local account, or this is a service account. Okay, so this is normal. Let's check and see the PDF if it has listed this number here. So we need to check all of these numbers to see if they are an existing users or they was removed. So for example, here we can see that 11 S1511, this is authenticated users. So this is a group that it is already there, it's not deleted. Okay, this is a local group. You can go and check to see if it is already there or not. It is there. Okay, it's not deleted. Okay, so this is not a finding. Okay, so we need to check all of these numbers if they are listed in the text file, so we don't need to remove them. If there is any numbers other than these, then we need to check and see if this ID belongs to a removed user or an existing user. If it's an existing user, then we don't need to remove it. If it is a user that was removed, we need to remove it from the user rights. Anyway, so we need to check and see. So here is telling us to check all of these. We need to check them and see if there is any users that are actually I didn't remove any users, so this is by default all in line with the PDF. So we need to check the other recommendation. Here he's saying that Windows Server 2019 systems must have unified extendable firmware and can be configured to run in UEFI mode, not legacy BIOS. Okay, so what is UEFI and what is legacy BIOS? Okay, before booting to the operating system, if you open your server or open your workstation, you will find a black screen and some commands are running, and then you are the display, or then the booting of Windows is displayed on your screen. So before booting to the system, there is something we can consider as a mini system. We call it legacy BIOS, okay, or we call it unified extendable firmware. So this is a system, okay, that appears, or it is before installing the operating system, okay. So he's saying that this system should be, or it is UEFI, okay. So before UEFI there was another system called legacy BIOS. So in the old days, before you install Windows operating system, you have a small system called legacy BIOS, okay. This is not secure anymore. Now if you buy a new computer, you will find the UEFI firmware instead of the legacy BIOS. So he is saying that when you are purchasing workstations or servers, you need to make sure that the system installed on it, or the mini system installed on it, before installing your main operating system. Let's call this mini system. So you need to make sure that the mini system you have on the server or workstation, before you install Windows, this should be UEFI, or unified extendable firmware, okay, because this is more secure, okay. So you need to take care to have it as UEFI, okay. So how we know that our system or our mini system on our server or workstation is UEFI or BIOS? We can know it from the system information. We can go to the system and check it. So let's see how we can check this, okay. So we can kill him system information. We will run something and we will see if we have it UEFI or legacy BIOS. Let's see how we can see this. We can go to the domain controller and run system info from the domain controller. So let's see how we can do this to know if our mini system on the domain controller, it is legacy BIOS or it is UEFI. So we will go to the domain controller and open a command prompt, and let's see. So now we will go to the domain controller, and any server that has Windows Server 2019 installed on it, so we'll put the password, and then we will run the command and press enter. Now we need to see the system summary. So he is saying that the BIOS mode, it is UEFI. So now we are secure. This is a secure system, okay. So you are in UEFI. So this is it, and you need to enable, so you have your firmware as UEFI. You need, and not legacy BIOS, okay. So you need to make sure also, after you enable the UEFI, or if you have a UEFI firmware, you need to make sure that it is, or there is another option accompanying it. It's called secure boot, okay. So this secures the booting of the operating system, so the Windows operating system. So you have two things. You need to have UEFI firmware to secure your server before installing the Windows operating system, and then you need to enable secure boot with the UEFI, so the booting to the Windows operating system after you install it will be secure. So these are two things you need to make sure, okay. So we have Windows Server core on the domain controller, so we'll run this command to confirm that it has secure boot. So let's go and see. Okay, let's see if I have secure boot enabled on my domain controller or not. Okay, let's see how we can do this. So let's continue. So we need to see the secure boot state, okay. So this is an option. If we enable it in the firmware, it will secure the booting of the operating system. No one can interrupt the boot or can manipulate the booting of the operating system. So let's see, secure boot, it is off, okay. So we need to make it on, okay. So let's run this command and see. We need to go, if it is not enabled, we need to go to the firmware and enable it, okay. We need to go to the firmware by opening the PC and press escape, and then go to the firmware and enable it. So confirm secure boot. Let's see, it's false, so we don't have the secure boot enabled. You need to go to the BIOS or to go to the firmware and enable it. Okay, so this is one thing. Okay, now this is another recommendation, and then another recommendation is to make the account lockout duration to be configured for 15 minutes or greater. So what we mean by account lockout? This means if the user try to log in or to type his password to log into the domain, and he has mistaken his password for 3 times, so he have typed his password wrong for more than 3 times, the account will be disabled or locked. Okay, how much time it will be locked? It will be locked for 15 minutes, and then it will be unlocked so he can try to put his password again. So for example, if a user doesn't remember his password, or he is mistaken typing his password, and he have done this for 3 times wrong, so he have typed his password 3 times wrong, the account will be locked. He will not be able to log in, and it will be unlocked after 15 minutes. So this is what you said. The account locker feature, when enabled, prevents brute force password attacks on the system. So there is some softwares that try different passwords, okay, or try to guess the password of the user by entering it more than once, okay, and if one of them is successful, he can log in. So if we are to prevent this kind of software, we are specifying that the period of time that the account will remain locked after a specific number of failed login attempts. Okay, so this is it. We need to go and make it 15. We have done this before, by the way. So we have a group policy to unlock the account after 15 minutes. We can run a command prompt to get us this info. So we can go to the group policy and check if we have the lock account duration to be 15 minutes, or we can run a command, and this command will export the file. In it we can know what is the lockout duration. So now we need to export it, so it will export the whole security policy of the domain controller. So let's go and see the file if we have the lockout duration for 15 minutes. Let's go to run and go to the C partition of the domain controller, and then we open the temp, and then we open file name. This is it. Let's see the lockout duration. The lockout duration is not -1, actually it is more than that. This is the local group policy, not the domain group policy, by the way. This is the local group policy. It's saying if it is 0, then this is good, because the account will not be unlocked unless the administrator unlock it. Okay, so this is not the domain group policy. This is the local group policy. So we need to see, or we can check it. Okay, so anyway, I think it's not -1 because I have it already 15. Anyway, so we will continue working. We can go and configure it from the group policy. Let's see the default domain policy if the account lockout duration is 15 minutes or more. So the default domain controller will be applied to all servers and workstations, including the domain controller. So let's go to the security and then local policies. This is the default domain controller, or I think this is the local domain controller. Local group policy. Here we can see go to 15 minutes. Okay, so this is how you can configure it. Okay, this is how you can configure it. This is the local group policy of the server. Okay, but you can do it from the default domain policy, and we have already configured this from the default domain policy. Okay, so this is it. Let's continue. Then you must have the allowed bad login attempts to be configured to 3 or more. So here is saying when should the account be locked. The account should be locked when you try to put the password 3 times on a row and they are wrong. Okay, so after 3 failed login attempts, the account will be locked. Okay, so now we can configure this. We can go and configure this from the default domain policy. We have this already configured. We need to configure it to 3. Okay, to account lockout threshold to be 3. So this is invalid login attempts. Okay, then you can make it to 3. Okay, so this is it. After 3 invalid login attempts. Okay, so this is it. and we have account lookout duration 15 minutes and reset account lookout counter after 15 minutes. Okay, so this is it. So we can check the text file to see what is the lookout bad count. I think it is 6 invalid login attempts, so we need to change it from 6 invalid login attempts to 3. Okay, so we have our default domain policy configured to 6 invalid login attempts, not 3, so we need to change it. So we can check that this is the local group policy, not the default domain policy, and then this is to reset the bad login counter after 15 minutes. The account lookout feature, when enabled, prevents brute force password attacks on the system. This parameter specifies the period of time that must pass after failed login attempts before the counter is reset to 0. The smaller this value is, the less effective the account lookout feature will be in protecting your local system. So we need to make it to 15 minutes, and this is already done, okay, by the way. So we can check our file and see if the reset lookout account it is 15 or not. Okay, so let's see, it is 15, so that's it. So let's continue working with the other recommendations. So I think maybe I am closing everything because this is the end of the video. Maybe I think yes. I think now I'm closing everything. I'm shutting down the server. So this concludes the end, or this is the end of our video. I will continue working in the upcoming video. So we will stop at reset account. So we will stop here at reset account count locker or account count. So hope this video informative for you all. I thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.